It has been the first full day of recovery and realization in Los Angeles. Many people were digging out from underneath the worst earthquake to hit the area in more than 20 years. While aftershocks continue to roll through the area, today was the first chance to stand back and see just how bad things actually are. And what people saw was devastation. And then came the realization that it will take a long time for Los Angeles to return to normal. In a moment, we will talk with an engineer who has been through disasters like this before about how a city can rebuild. First, though, the emotional toll of the earthquake. And joining us tonight from Los Angeles is Dr. Robert Scott. He's a disaster psychologist who is also the regional mental health advisor for the LA Red Cross. Dr. Scott, with the aftershocks still occurring and I guess reality setting in about the extent of loss of property and life, how do you describe the emotions of the people you're meeting? Is it fear? Is it numbness? Is there a fatalism? What do you find?
Well, I think right now we're following pretty closely a very normal track of stages that people go through in disaster. And what we're feeling right now, we're experiencing is a lot of shock and dismay and disbelief. We're not quite into the stage where people are really starting to notice and sense the full impact of what they've been through. There's a lot of shock and disorganized thinking and numbness.
When you think about the drought and the fires and the riots and the earthquakes and the prospect of lost homes and lost hope, how then do people respond? You hear some people who say that's life in LA. You have others who are saying this is the last straw.
Well, I think overall you're right. LA has been hit, and Southern California in general. We have had our share of disasters, and I think what we're really looking at is a sense of cumulative stress. We have been under so many different stressors: natural disasters, man-made disasters, social disasters. And we're also dealing with an economy and unemployment and poverty. So I think our cup is really full, and people are really feeling the impact of that. And I think that's part of why this particular final straw is hitting people so hard.
I mean, it's a city that we view from the outside as already a city in crisis, just on a day-to-day basis.
Well, that's true to some extent, but I also want to remind you that LA has quite a resiliency. We've come back from many different traumas and tragedies. So there's a lot of goodwill and there's a lot of spirit in our city here. So I want to just keep that in mind, that we do have a lot of resiliency. I think we're really being stretched, and what's exciting is people are coming forward. Like the group I work for, we're volunteer psychologists in a large disaster network throughout the nation. And this LA chapter has been training for years. And we're out there, we're working with people, we're trying to be supportive and provide reassurance, and there's a message about the fact that what people are feeling is very normal given what they've all been through.
They're feeling, I'm sure their feelings are normal given what they've been through, but how can you instill hope? Maybe you try not to. I don't know what you attempt to do with people whose lives are in tatters and over and above that are living, waiting for the next big one, the next one that might happen.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, it's quite a challenge. You're right. And I think we need to, by demonstration, you can't believe the kind of goodwill you see in these shelters. I was in a shelter all day today. And the goodwill and the people coming out to help and the donations, what it does is it does instill hope in people. And I think that's the kind of thing that gives us the will to go on. We have had a lot of tragedy in this city and in this area. So I think it's the goodwill of people that keeps demonstrating that there is hope.
Are there a certain number of people, though, that just don't recover from this kind of disaster?
Absolutely. This may be, just the final piece for someone who's just been overwhelmed with so many different events. Mm-hmm. So what we find out from disaster is a large percentage of people actually come out better through recovery and in the post-recovery period. When they get to that reconciliation period and final closure, they're actually stronger in being able to look back and see what they've been through. There is a small percentage of people that they just can't recover from this.
But Dr. Scott, there must be a sense some days you must just want to tell people, move, get out of here.
Well, for some it may be an answer, but right now our main message is don't make any major life decisions for several months and up to sometimes a year, we say don't make a major life decision because of the reactions that people are experiencing. They tend to want to make quick, impulsive decisions, and we try to tell them not to.
Dr. Robert Scott, we appreciate your comments tonight. It's a tough job you've got. Thank you.
You're welcome, and Pamela, thank you.
Of course, yesterday's earthquake will leave more than just emotional and physical scars. The damage it has done to the city's infrastructure, to the roads and buildings, will be visible for years.
For many of the quake victims, surviving the initial shock waves was difficult enough. Now they face another severe jolt when they assess the damage and when they begin trying to rebuild their lives. The reason is, most people simply do not have insurance to cover their losses in such a disaster. Less than 25% of California homeowners have earthquake insurance, and less than 10% of all U.S. homeowners have earthquake insurance. 98% of U.S. homes are covered by homeowners insurance, but that is required by law. Disaster relief sites set up throughout this earthquake-devastated area help people meet their physical needs, such as toilets and food. But many people have moved to parks, as we've indicated earlier here on Prime News, and they've moved in part because of a loss of spirit. CNN medical correspondent Andrew Holtz reports.
Though Jose Guadamuza's apartment has some cracks in the walls, it's standing. He and his family could stay here. Instead, they're sleeping in a park.
I feel safe in the park because we don't like to...
Living without a roof over your head also means there's no roof that could fall on your head. Instant replays of the earthquake invade dreams.
All of a sudden, she woke up. She said she was dreaming that there was an iron earthquake, and she said that all her body fell asleep, but she couldn't feel anything.
It's a familiar pattern to mental health counselors.
Aftershocks, and every time you have an aftershock, you're reliving the initial shock. And viscerally, that's a very powerful experience.
She hasn't had her medication yet. 2 days now.
The stress includes waiting in line for everything from phones to food to water. It took an hour to get to these purified water dispensers, and then the water cost 4 times the posted price.
$3 for 3 gallons of water.
There is anger at the San Fernando Recreation Park, too. One camper told producer Tom Watkins he didn't think people here are getting enough food or shelter.
People are feeling out of control, and you have no control over an act of God, and people also have a little difficulty getting angry at God.
Counselors say after any disaster, people are angry, have trouble sleeping or eating. In coming days, concerns for safety or shelter will ease. The minds of quake survivors will then have room for darker thoughts.
We'll see people with, really sadness and a sense of loss, and depression will set in, and a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. And that's again where we want to say, hey, this is normal.
Disaster response teams now include counselors because while a few thousand people were physically hurt, experts say millions feel emotional aftershocks. Most people are not at shelters visited by disaster counselors. Mental health experts say they also need to reach out to people feeling the emotional, the mental trauma within the walls of home after home, apartment after apartment. Since there aren't enough counselors to go door to door, they urge people to talk out their feelings with friends or family and seek help if they need it. But they won't find it at Los Angeles' only emergency room for psychiatric patients. Officials shut down the County USC Hospital psychiatric ward. And of course, this earthquake is just Los Angeles' latest shock.
And before the fires, there was, the trials and the riots and the violence and the unemployment. I mean, this is a city that is highly stressed. So this is just one more notch of stress that people are having to endure, and it's tough.
The effects of the earthquake are likely to linger for months. For though the ground may be still, the mind and spirit still tremble. Andrew Holtz, CNN, San Fernando, California.